A warm welcome to The World Today. Here's what's coming up on the program. Trump rivals in the Republican Party sing his praises at the party's convention in Milwaukee. King Charles sets out Prime Minister Keir Starmer's legislative agenda in Parliament. Plus, cyanide found in bodies of 8 foreigners killed in a hotel in Bangkok. The World Today starts now. It was all a show of unity by Trump rivals at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee on Tuesday. The likes of former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and former Republican presidential hopeful Nikki Haley told members, "We have to go with Donald Trump." Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warned Americans cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency. These were the last 2 contenders for the Republican Party's nomination, people who argued Trump's policies and wanted a chance at becoming the party's choice in the November elections.
Donald Trump's former rivals for the Republican presidential nomination came together to endorse his candidacy at the party's convention on Tuesday in a strong display of unity 3 days after the former president survived an assassination attempt. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley had described Trump as unfit for office during her campaign, but on day 2 of the convention, she urged her supporters to back him over Democratic President Joe Biden for the sake of the nation.
I'll start by making one thing perfectly clear. Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. If we have 4 more years of Biden or a single day of Harris, our country will be badly worse off. For the sake of our nation, we have to go with Donald Trump. We should acknowledge that there are some Americans who don't agree with Donald Trump 100% of the time. I happen to know some of them. And I want to speak to them tonight. My message to them is simple. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him. Take it from me, I haven't always agreed with President Trump. But we agree more often than we disagree.
Ron DeSantis.
While conservative Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, among the last to stay in the nomination race against Trump, spoke proudly of his state's strong support for the party.
Our enemies do not confine their designs to between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. We need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency. But let's be honest. Now, Donald Trump stands in their way and he stands up for America. Donald Trump has been demonized. He's been sued. He's been prosecuted, and he nearly lost his life. We cannot let him down, and we cannot let America down. For decades, my home state saw elections determined by razor-thin margins. Today, due to bold leadership, the Democratic Party lies in ruins. The left is in retreat. Freedom reigns supreme. The woke mind virus is dead, and Florida is a solid Republican state.
Arkansas's Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders praised Mr. Trump, declaring that not even an assassin's bullet could stop him.
I have always been proud to stand with President Trump, but never have I been more proud than to stand with him right now, tonight. Not even an assassin's bullet could stop him. God Almighty intervened because America is one nation under God, and He is certainly not finished with President Trump. President Trump is a leader, and he's the leader our country needs. And if ever there was a doubt, earlier this week, we saw just how tough, resilient, courageous, and daring this man is, and we can't get him back in the White House fast enough.
The show of group harmony appeared to be aimed at contrasting with the Democratic Party, which is divided over whether 81-year-old President Joe Biden should drop his re-election bid amid fresh questions about his mental stability. The former president's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who co-chairs the Republican National Committee, closed the night on day 2.
Last Saturday was a jarring reminder that we, as Americans, must always remember. There is more that unites us than divides us. We all want this country to be great, even if we don't always agree on the best way of doing that.
Following Saturday's assassination attempt, voter fears about the polarized state of the nation appear to have deepened. According to polls, 80% of voters, with similar shares among Republicans and Democrats, agreed the country is spiraling out of control in the wake of the shooting. Mr. Trump is due to formally accept the Republican Party's nomination in a primetime speech on Thursday to face Democratic President Joe Biden in the November 5 election. While J.D. Vance, Mr. Trump's vice president pick, is scheduled to address the convention on Wednesday.
The Democratic campaign of Joe Biden has also picked up since Saturday's attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Speaking in Nevada on Tuesday, President Biden promised black voters his all-in to seek re-election on November 5. Mr. Biden was greeted by chants of 4 more years as he spoke to the NAACP's annual convention in Las Vegas, a major gathering of black voters. He also assailed Donald Trump's record as president in his first political speech since his Republican rival's attempted assassination. Biden said he was grateful that Trump was not seriously hurt at the campaign rally on Saturday, but criticized him on a variety of fronts, including his handling of the economy during the coronavirus pandemic.
I'm honored to be here. To me, it's this tense moment in this country, and it is a tense moment. Just a few days after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, we're grateful he was not seriously injured. We continue to pray for him and his family. It's time for an important conversation in this country. Our politics has gotten too heated. I said the Oval Office on Sunday night, as I made clear throughout my presidency, we all have a responsibility to lower the temperature and condemn violence in any form. His mismanagement of the pandemic was especially devastating to black communities. Oh, I know, because in other countries, other communities of color. That economic crisis drove up black unemployment, decimated small black businesses, and you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. Donald Trump called for the National Guard to go after you. What in the hell's the matter with this man? No, I'm serious. Go figure. From a guy who spread the birthism lie against Barack Obama, saying he wasn't born in America and he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States. Folks, it's because of you that I'm president and Kamala Harris is vice president. And by the way,
And those black voters heard President Biden's appeal, and majority of them said they feel confident of his ability to run another term, and seeing him speak to them has calmed their nerves. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, is the oldest and largest U.S. civil rights organization, represents a key constituency for the Democratic Party. While black voters turned out heavily for Biden in 2020, polls have shown waning support for him from the constituency in this election.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is I've learned the media is a little harsh, and what I've seen on the news about Biden wasn't necessarily reflected here in that room. He seemed to be a lot more aware than the traditional media has been saying.
I think his speech was marvelous. I do think he has what it takes, regardless of what other people are saying. His alternative's only a few years younger than him, so what's the difference? Okay? I think he's a promise for Black Americans, for America, period. I think at this point, compared to alternative, he's what we definitely need.
Wherever these polls are, nobody's polled me. And according to with our NAACP, our president has stated that there has not been that many people who have really said that they're concerned about that. Both of them are old. We knew both of them were old. I mean, it's not like it's a 25-year difference.
No doubt about it. He calmed my nerves after seeing what I've seen over the last couple of weeks in the news, in the media and the way it's been portrayed. He didn't stumble over his words. He looked strong. He looked in control of everything, his faculties and all of that. And it basically gave me what I needed, a reassurance of what I needed as to what I was going to do anyway, which was support him anyhow, because it's too late in the game for him to step out at this point. So we just got to fight.
So my feelings after seeing him speak today is he's definitely strong, he's definitely ready to do the job, and he understands the assignment. And I don't believe that it's a time for him to step down right now.
From what we've heard today, he sounds like he is addressing the issues that are important to us.
And I also believe he's surrounded by a team that will help support him, which is necessary. So he has those people to help fill in any gaps where we, as the community, may feel like, hey, Biden, this might not be in your wheelhouse. He's shown us that he has advisors and he has people that he trusts that are looking out for everyone's interests. So it's never just the one person.
Let's bring in international affairs analyst Calvin Dark is in Washington, D.C. Calvin, great to see you. And interestingly, you're a black man. So let's ask you, in the circles that you belong to, is there confidence that President Joe Biden can take this election and win in November?
Very good to be here. It's a very complicated question. And, as I was listening to what those voters said, here's something I think will help people understand. If you ask most Democrats, most African Americans, myself included, if the alternative to Biden is Donald Trump, I'll vote for Joe Biden if he's in a hospital bed. But now, if you ask, is he the best candidate that we have to run against Donald Trump to win? And can he do this for 4 more years? Not everybody's on the same page on that question. So the reality is that, as you heard most of those voters say, if he's the alternative to Donald Trump, they're going to vote for him. But that's a long way from saying they support him as the best candidate to win.
That's a really interesting perspective. I mean, listening to President Joe Biden, his performance in Las Vegas is a clear deviation away from, how he performed at the presidential debate 2 weeks ago. But his voice was strong. It was impressive. He got his points across. I would say that, people seem really impressed, with the way that he carried on trying to convince voters of the NAACP.
Well, I think one of the issues is, just to be perfectly honest, is he is doing better than the debate. But 2 things to remember. We all know how age works. It only goes in one direction. And I don't think there are many Democrats who are saying that they don't believe Joe Biden can do the job now. But can he do it until January 20th, 2029? I think most people understand what it's like to deal with someone who's dealing with age. And given what's happening around the world in the United States, is he the best person to do that? I also think, too, Biden is obviously trying to show himself more strong, but, he's doing it with friendly crowds. I guarantee you, everybody who went to an NAACP convention was already going to vote for Biden because they're engaged Democratic voters. Notice he had a teleprompter. He excels in those events, but it's when he doesn't have a teleprompter, when Donald Trump is beside him, lying about his record, can he stand up to that? And I think that's the question.
It is the question. And let's just backtrack to President Trump, the former president of the United States, and the Republican National Convention, which is currently going on in Milwaukee. Watching his trajectory up until this point, it is undeniable that he does provide a strong leadership for the Republican Party. This race could be tougher than ever, Calvin.
Oh, it definitely could. Let's keep in perspective that before the disastrous debate with Joe Biden, he was already losing. And so Trump has been in a winning posture since he got into the race. And after the assassination attempt, he already had the unified Republican Party against him. This just got sympathy for him. And when it comes to new voters, I don't think there's any Biden voter that because of the assassination attempt is going to vote for Trump. I do think that those Trump voters who maybe didn't quite like all the things he says and were kind of on the fence about voting for him, now they're on fire for him because they see what he experienced because he's running. And I think that will help Trump immensely.
Yes, I wanted to ask you what you make of the rhetoric at the Republican Party convention so far. In light of the incident on Saturday, has a political tension been doused? Is that what you're sensing from the way the speeches are going, especially from former Trump rivals Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis?
No, I think the lowering the temperature lasted about 17, 18 hours after Saturday, but it's no more. We saw the similar kind of comments about, America will be destroyed or America, you won't recognize it if Democrats win. But I think that we're not going to see a lowering of the temperature for two reasons. One is neither side believes that they are responsible as well. They may say we both need to lower the temperature, but Democrats believe it's Republicans' faults and vice versa. The second thing is politicians want to win. And a headline that Biden and Trump sat down for a peaceful, calm discussion of discussing ideas doesn't get attention of voters. It's that contention, unfortunately, and that rhetoric that gets voters' attention. So because of that, the parties are going to continue this way until election.
I wanted to get your thoughts on Trump's pick for vice president, J.D. Vance. He was once a critic of Trump. Now he's a big fan. Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, the last two contenders for the Republican Party's ticket, both also were critics of Trump, but now they're on his side. Talk about the about face that was seen at the Republican Party's convention.
I mean, if you're Donald Trump and you want to be Caesar, you can't ask for better visuals. He gets to sit there and full of a stadium dedicated to him, while people who were established lawmakers, governors, before he came on the scene and essentially trashed him, now they're having to come back and laud him and applaud him. That's exactly what he wants. And I think it also shows that when it comes to opposition in the Republican Party, there effectively is none. And they have shown that if they want a future in the Republican Party, they've got to get behind Trump. And we saw that clearly.
What do you think he's going to say tomorrow? I'd heard that, the former president had, a speech ready to rile up the crowds, but in light of what has happened, we will notice a more toned down speech tomorrow on Thursday when he formally accepts the Republican Party's nomination. What do you think he's going to say?
Well, I laugh because if it was normal Trump, he would be at like a level 12 anyway. I think we're probably going to see him about at a level 8 when it comes to the incendiary rhetoric, which is way more than most politicians. But because it's less, he's going to be viewed as unifying. Oh my, Trump didn't come out and insult everyone. And I think it's going to be very effective. I think he's going to end this convention looking like the stronger person wanting to unify. And Joe Biden is going to struggle to try to take that title back.
And finally, Calvin, because I know you're really busy, let's talk about Trump's relations with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, when Trump was president, the bromance between the two, was evident. Trump refused to accuse the Russian president of refused to accuse Russia of interfering in American elections. He said he spoke to Putin, asked him 3 times, and Putin, of course, denied it. What was he supposed to say? But the Kremlin says that, said when this incident happened on Saturday that President Putin did not intend to speak with Trump, and it still hasn't spoken to Trump even since then. It all seems like they're just watching from afar and kind of know what's going on.
Right. Let me tell you, I don't have any proof or any details, but I'm sure that if there's anything Putin and Russia can do to ensure a Trump victory, they will do it. And our intelligence services are aware of that. Secondly, it makes perfect sense that he didn't call, or at least announce that he wasn't going to call Trump, because Putin genuinely does want Trump to win. It's easiest for him, whether it be for NATO, Ukraine, everything that's happening. And he knows that if he were to call, as many other world leaders, like the new UK Prime Minister, called former President Trump to offer, thankfulness that he wasn't seriously injured in the attempt. But Putin knows that would be the big headline for 2 days, that Putin and Trump are, catching up on old times. So he's smart. He knows what he's doing. He wants Trump to win.
Thanks again, Calvin. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Welcome back to The World Today. I was talking about the bromance between Russian President Vladimir Putin and former U.S. President Donald Trump. It appears that was not shown to the media during the Trump presidency. Well, we did see a lot of it, though, but it was not carried over after Trump left the White House. The Russian government says nothing good came out of Trump's tenure for Russia from 2017 to 2021, though there had at least been dialogue between Moscow and Washington, which was probably a positive thing in itself. And this coming from the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, making the comments during a conference call with reporters in Moscow when asked about remarks Mr. Trump has made about his working relationship with the Russian president in the past. Mr. Peskov said that Russia and Putin were themes which traditionally came up during election campaigns in the United States. Americans still reacting to Donald Trump's vice president pick in the person of J.D. Vance in New York, the headquarters of Trump's businesses. Some New Yorkers think the choice of Vance was an interesting one, seen as Vance himself has criticized the former president. Others believe the pick of Vance is not a relevant factor for winning.
I think it's surprising. I thought he would pick someone more moderate. So it's definitely interesting to see, especially that I've just heard a lot of things that he doesn't really like Trump in the past. So interesting to see.
I really don't know too much about J.D. Vance, other than I guess he's young and he's a Midwesterner, I believe, as you stated, from Ohio. The only thing I ever heard about J.D. Vance is that he is critical of the United States' support for Ukraine and spending money on that.
I think it's unfortunate that J.D. Vance is leveraging his position as an author to take advantage of the American public. I think he's positioned himself as a person of the working class when he's actually not. He's a person who comes from means. And similar to Trump, he is making policy choices and advocating for policies that will be deeply harmful to working class people. So it makes a lot of sense to me that he was chosen, but I think it will be a really unfortunate thing for the American public if he is elected and they're both elected.
I think the selection of J.D. Vance is not going to be a relevant factor in him winning or not. I think the recent events with the assassination attempt is going to galvanize his campaign. And I also think that economic inflation is really going to hurt Biden, plus concerns over his age. So I don't really see J.D. Vance or any person he would have picked for VP as a relevant factor that's going to change people's minds.
I think at the end of the day, Trump understands his base very well, and his base is white, cisgender, right-leaning men.
Well, staying with criticism, there's been no holding back for Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, regarding the way Secret Service agents conducted themselves on Saturday when someone tried to assassinate the former president in Pennsylvania. And just outside the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Giuliani questioned how the agents were not able to adequately save the former president, despite, according to him, enough resources that they get.
It was incompetent to put the short people in front and the tall people in the back. The tall people should have been where his face was. You remember at one point one of them put their hand up like that? That's an indication of incompetence, because with a gun you can shoot right through the hand. The hand is almost telling you where to shoot. Oh yeah, let me hit the hand, I'll kill the president. I do not understand who was running this. There's no question they didn't have enough. I do know that they've asked for more resources constantly and not gotten them. I know that because I was asked about it. And I know that their decision on Kennedy, which they finally reversed only because of Donald Trump, is outrageous. Completely indefensible not protecting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You're going to tell me in this country there aren't a fair number of people that want to kill the last Kennedy? And you, Biden, sit by and let it and do nothing about it until you're virtually dragged into the gutter to do it?
Amid concerns over gun control in the United States in light of the assassination attempt made on the former president, supporters at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee say the attempt is not a Second Amendment reform issue. Some delegates still fiercely oppose gun reforms, not advocating for limits or bans on assault rifles, raising the legal age to buy a gun, or even more robust background checks. The delegates were dead set against any type of reform to America's gun laws.
Guns don't kill people. Crazy people kill people. Mentally ill people kill people. People, kill with all sorts of. They poison people. They use knives. I don't think this is, and I don't think it's a time to be making it about a gun debate. I think that it was a Secret Service issue. I think that it was, a diligence of duty. But I don't think that guns is the major factor here.
We need our weapons to protect ourselves. We're still in that era, and as long as we're human beings that I can see, we need our weapons to take care of ourselves, to defend ourselves. And what happened is appalling. People were pointing out that shooter, and what did speaking bad about the blue or FBI or anything, but my God, why didn't you listen to the people? They're telling you.
I believe that we wouldn't have a July 4th, 1776 without guns. So I absolutely support our Second Amendment right to the fullest. And I believe that President Trump should have better security around him.
This wasn't a gun problem, and what happened to President Trump, it was a human problem. It was a madman trying to take another person's life. You got to be crazy.
Meanwhile, church community members have held an impromptu prayer circle across the street from Pennsylvania venue where former U.S. President Donald Trump was shot and injured during an attempted assassination at a rally over the weekend. About a dozen people from different churches gathered under tents in a yard in Butler, Pennsylvania. One organizer said that they just wanted to let community members know that they were praying for them. The shooting has intensified fears among Americans about the deeply divided state of the nation ahead of the November 5 election.
The point of this was really to let the community know we're praying for them. It was not an issue of praying for this person to be president, that person to be president. It was rather just pray for our nation, pray for the people of our nation, pray for our community. And we did it. I think it's on our minds because we're here, and it happened right there. Of course our nation's been divided. I mean, there have been civil war, there has been assassinations, there have been rhetoric lately that seems very divisive. But we're always, freedom is always something that is a tension to be held up. And so it's not necessarily because more than ever we need it. We always need prayer. We always need the Holy Spirit to do a work in our hearts. We always need the gospel of Jesus Christ. But it happened in our backyard, so it's on our minds more. So it was more in regards to where it happened than that it happened.
That God will use these events, as terrible as they are, to bring people who don't know him, to bring people in his church, to bring people that are hurting, to bring this whole community closer to him in the process, closer to realizing that he is in control. He has the answers even when we don't. He has the peace that surpasses all understanding, and we can always turn to him. Maybe just a little bit more closer than we were turning to him yesterday. And if that's all that brings out of this tragedy, then God can use that to bring peace to people who might not have had it, or maybe who needed it a little bit more.
Let's walk back now to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in the United States. The VOA's Steve Herman is standing by for us. Steve has been monitoring the situation on the ground. Steve, great to see you. Been a while. A real while. Great to see you in Milwaukee. And I'm sure that the energy over there is through the roof. I mean, with all the pictures we've been seeing on, the convention, the speeches and everything, people must be really excited to be in the hall, at least, to listen to some of these speeches, many of them praising the former president and also referring to what happened on Saturday, thanking God that he's alive and saying, what could have happened, if he had, been really hit by the bullet.
Yes, I've been covering politics for decades in the United States and overseas. And what we have here, essentially, it's not a nomination, it is a coronation. And it's really taken on what I would describe as almost a religious fervor. The times that Donald Trump has appeared with a bandage on his ear, it has been adulation. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like tomorrow night when he comes out. I'm hearing the speech could last as long as 90 minutes, and it'll probably be interrupted by applause many, many times. And the big warm-up act this evening here in Milwaukee will be J.D. Vance. He is a junior senator from the state of Ohio, probably not known very much outside the United States or even very much outside the state of Ohio, because he's only been around on the political scene for about a year and a half.
That's the interesting part, isn't it, Steve? The fact that this is a political ingenue who's getting on the scene, and then he's already going for, one of the most important offices in American politics. I mean, what do people really make of him? The fact also that he was also a critic of Trump even before, this convention. Could what happened on Saturday have had, any impacts on that? Could we attribute it to, what we now know about the assassination attempt on the former president?
Well, I don't know that there was a direct connection between that and the selection of J.D. Vance. He had been one of the finalists, and I was telling people last week I really thought that he was going to be the one that Trump selected. And you are absolutely right. He was, back in 2016, quite critical of Donald Trump. He called his policies reprehensible. And like many, many Republicans, 2016, 2020, 2024, there's been a 180-degree shift in at least their public pronouncements towards Donald Trump. And in J.D. Vance's case, it has really paid off, because if Trump wins the election in November, he becomes vice president and one heartbeat away from becoming president of the United States.
Now, tomorrow, the former president will formally accept the party's nomination for president, although it almost seems like they already did it. I mean, he already accepted it. He's spoken, at various times during this convention. He's spoken at various times. So what would be different about what he'll say tomorrow?
I don't know that we're going to see very much different from 2020, 2016. This is the third consecutive time the Republican Party has nominated Donald J. Trump to be their candidate for president. He's has a 50% result so far. He lost his re-election bid in 2020, and I can tell you the Republicans here are very confident that Trump is going to win in November, and so they believe that tomorrow night they will be watching not only a former president, but a future president.
And I see that he still has the bandage on his ear where, the bullet grazed on Saturday. And I know that I'm just wondering, some of the politics surrounding that, how that's working for him, how he's taken advantage of that at the convention.
Well, what is a bit strange about that Donald Trump's bandage on his ear is now we have delegates imitating that, also putting bandages on their uninjured ears. It's gone beyond a meme. It is a symbol in the eyes of many Republicans that Donald Trump was spared by God, that he turned his head at just the precise moment. You can call it miraculous if you want, but people do believe here, a lot of people believe here, that it was divine intervention that saved Donald Trump at that rally in Pennsylvania.
Very impressive, especially for the evangelicals in America, the ones who helped President Trump win in 2016. So any updates on the attempted assassination attempt?
The investigation is underway. This will be the first of several investigations, but the most important one being done by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And still, there are many, many unanswered questions, but a lot of the stuff that was out there on the internet immediately after the assassination attempt appears to be totally bogus. There's absolutely no evidence that any foreign government was involved in this, that it was any sort of conspiracy.
Thanks again, Steve. We'll leave you to get back to the convention. We know you have a lot of work today. Thank you for bringing us up to speed.
My pleasure.
The VOA's Steve Herman in Milwaukee. Away from the U.S. presidential election and its developments, self-exiled Chinese businessman WangG has been convicted by a U.S. court of defrauding his online followers in a $1 billion scam. He was found guilty on 9 of the 12 criminal counts that he faced, including racketeering, fraud, and money laundering. Guo's sentencing has been scheduled for November, when he could face decades behind bars. He's been in prison since his arrest in March 2023. He's a critic of the Chinese Communist Party and was an associate of Stephen Bannon, an ex-White House chief strategist under former President Donald Trump. Prosecutors say Guo raised more than $1 billion from online followers who joined him in investment and cryptocurrency schemes between 2018 and 2023. Britain's King Charles has set out Prime Minister Keir Starmer's legislative agenda, promising a government of service focused on reviving the economy and tackling issues from an acute housing shortage to cost of living crisis. In a ceremony full of pageantry before an audience of robed lords and lawmakers, the King read out the laws the government is prioritizing after Starmer's centre-left Labour Party won a large majority at this month's election. The package of more than 35 bills will focus on growing the economy, reforming planning laws to make it easier to build homes, and speeding up the delivery of major infrastructure projects, improving transport, and also creating jobs. The King's speech, written by the government, also tried to set a new tone to British politics, promoting service rather than self-interest, something Labour says took root over 14 years of often chaotic Conservative Party rule.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government will govern in service to the country. My government's legislative programme will be mission-led and based upon the principles of security, fairness and opportunity for all. Stability will be the cornerstone of my government's economic policy, and every decision will be consistent with its fiscal rules. It will legislate to ensure that all significant tax and spending changes are subject to an independent assessment by the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Record rainfall from 3 huge storms has flooded parts of Toronto, cutting power and leaving drivers stranded on the major motorway through the city. Environment Canada reports that almost 100 millimeters of rain fell on Toronto on Tuesday, surpassing the city's daily record set in 1941.
Heavy rains caused severe flooding in Toronto on Tuesday, leaving cars stranded on major highways in parts of the city. Lines of vehicles came to a standstill on some of Toronto's busiest roads as first responders worked to rescue drivers. Several cars were seen partially submerged in floodwaters throughout the city. Toronto resident Brandy Rowley said emergency responders had to pull him out of his car amid flooding on the Gardiner Expressway.
I was waiting like 2 hours before fire services and the emergency fire, everybody, the first responders to respond. And it happened very jiffly. They got everybody out. Not everybody, but I got out. They took me out. They rescued me because I was in the flooded area part 2 of my car. So I got out and everything. So I'm good.
The flooding also affected Toronto's main transit center, Union Station, as well as parts of the Billy Bishop Airport. Tens of thousands of power outages were reported throughout the city. Toronto Hydro, the local power distribution company, said it was responding to scattered outages that it suspected were caused by flooding at a transmission station. Over 120,000 customers were without power. The intense overnight storm resulted in significant flooding across the city, with heavy rainfall inundating the mansion of famous rapper and singer Drake. Drake, who shared videos on Instagram of the damage, showed water rising above his ankles inside his mansion. The flooding scene inside his home was dramatic, with water pooling on the floor. The storm, which was partly fueled by remnants of Hurricane Beryl, brought not only heavy rain but also strong winds that exacerbated the damage. Despite the flooding, no injuries have been reported, and cleanup efforts are already underway as the city braces for more possible rain later in the week.
Welcome back. Israeli firefighters and security have examined damages and tried to control fires that broke after an overnight rocket barrage fired from Lebanon to its towns and cities across Israel's border. The sound of siren was caught on camera in the Israeli city of Nahariya, bordering Lebanon on its north and the Mediterranean on its west. In the eastern part of Israel-Lebanon border, near the city of Kiryat Shimona, fires broke after a rocket barrage from Lebanon hit the area. Residential buildings inside the city suffered damages. Israeli army spokesperson announcements said that over 20 projectiles were identified crossing from Lebanon into Israel in different areas and barrages overnight, some of which were intercepted. No injuries were reported. Hezbollah will hit new targets in Israel if it keeps killing civilians in Lebanon, so says group's leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah, noting a spike in the number of non-combatants killed in Lebanon in recent days. 5 civilians, all Syrians, and including 3 children, were killed in Israeli strikes in Lebanon on Tuesday, and at least 3 Lebanese civilians were killed the day before. Hezbollah, an Iran-backed militant group, refers to all Israeli population centers as settlements and does not recognize Israel. Israel and Hezbollah have been trading fire since the group announced a support front with Palestinians shortly after its ally Hamas attacked southern Israeli border communities on October 7, triggering Israel's ensuing military offensive in Gaza. Cyanide has been found in the blood of all 6 who died in a luxury hotel suite in Bangkok, Thailand. That's according to doctors who examined the bodies. Based on the initial post-mortem examination, they say there is no other cause that would explain their deaths except for cyanide. But further tests are being carried out to determine the intensity of the deadly chemical and to rule out any other toxins. Forensic investigators had earlier found traces of cyanide on the teacups used by the victims, all of whom are Vietnamese origin, including 2 with dual U.S. citizenship. Police suspect that one of the dead was behind the poisoning and was driven by crushing debt, but have not said who. Countries such as Algeria and Sierra Leone are backing Russia's calls for more multilateralism. This occurred at the UN Security Council meeting, which Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is chairing. Meanwhile, the permanent representative of Sierra Leone to the UN, Michael Imran Kanu, raised concerns about global inclusivity. During the meeting, the UK, the US and other Western countries condemned Russia over Ukraine. Lavrov himself accused the neo-colonial West of being against genuine multilateralism to the detriment of global South nations.
As the country has been providing.
Multilateral cooperation is not something new. There were instances of multilateralism through military alliance, treaties, and trade routes in the Mediterranean region and elsewhere during ancient times. While this may not fit the modern definition of multilateral cooperation, it illustrates the idea of various entities coming together for common purposes. We have the 2030 Agenda. It represents a universal framework that addresses poverty, environmental degradation, and economic inequalities. And let's not forget that this agenda calls for the full realization of the right to self-determination of people living under colonial and foreign occupation.
Well, people have been laying flowers and bringing toys to a memorial in a ceremony marking the 10th anniversary of the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 plane that crashed near Hrabov in Russian-controlled Donetsk region of Ukraine. The MH17 was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was shot down on July 17, 2014 by a missile fired from territory held by the pro-Russian rebels during fighting on eastern Ukraine. All 298 people on board were killed, 2/3 of them Dutch nationals. After years of collecting evidence, a Dutch-led international joint investigation team last year said the missile launcher used to hit the civilian airplane came from a Russian army base just across the border. Russia has denied any involvement with the downing of the civilian airliner.
Белых журавлей. Да, так бывает.
Вот за что? Не за что, но вы же понимаете, что вот этим органам...
Очень больно, что, понимаете,
14 high school students in Tokyo have been hospitalized after eating spicy chips. 30 students had consumed the snack after one male student brought it to school. The student said the chips were purchased by his older brother. The students who were rushed to the hospital said their mouth and stomach were in pain after consuming the snack, but were conscious and treated for minor symptoms. The maker of the snack, Isoyama Corporation, issued an apology in an online statement and wished the students speedy recovery. The snack, called R18 curry chips, comes with a warning for those under the age of 18 and those with high blood pressure and a weak stomach not to consume it. It further advises consumers to not consume the snack all in one's own, since it could cause diarrhea. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.